Hi, I'm MTG, and welcome to my channel where I waste my wild cards on meme decks so you don't have to. And oh my goodness, this deck today is a request from one of the channel members, Patreons, Sasser or Sir Sass, and I was not expecting to actually really want to even build this commander. It was not on my radar. I was like, I think it's kind of bad, but oh my goodness, try not to spoil anything. I am so excited for y'all to see the gameplay here. So I'll just go ahead and jump into the gameplay or the deck intro here and stop rambling. But yeah, I'm so excited. Okay, see you in a second. All right, we are rocking Shelob, Child of Ungoliant. There's 6 CMC, Death Touch, Ward 2. Other spiders you control have Death Touch and Ward 2. And whenever another creature dealt damage this turn by a spider you controlled dies, create a token that's a copy of that creature, except it's a food artifact with pay 2, tap, sacrifice this artifact, and you gain 3 life, and it loses all other card types. So what's interesting is basically if the creature had like an ETB, you get that ETB with the copy token food thing that you have essentially, and it's really fun. So again, try not to spoil anything, but this is really cool. So with this too, that leads to kind of some other shenanigans that I think were important here. So potentially, like as an alternate win con, maybe we could have like Marionette Master to drain out the board, but I was trying not to lean too heavy into necessarily like all the artifact synergies. And so what I have in here that we are leaning into a bit more was trying to utilize like the Death Touch Lord effect that's going to be happening for all of our spiders with like fight spells, because if we have like a 1/1 Death Toucher, we just punch face. We don't really care if that dies, but if we're taking out like an 8/8, that's cool for us without having to worry about sacrificing our own commander or maybe some of those fight spell effects. And I actually call this Foighton Spiders a bit more because I had a lot more fight spells in this deck, but I ended up cutting a lot of them for like protection pieces, but I still think it's funny to call this Foighton Spiders and have some of the fighting effects in here. And then we also have like Sky Fisher Spider, and then things like Maskwood Nexus and other like kind of good spider lords like Ishkana, because I wanted to not just arbitrarily add spiders because they're spiders into this deck, because I think with how powerful a lot of new cards have been dropping, that if you just have to pay 3 mana for a 2/1 Reacher, that's kind of bad. And so what I was hoping for was maybe for Maskwood Nexus, if there's any sort of creatures that aren't spiders, that maybe we can have some sort of changeling effects that allow essentially all of our creatures to get those same benefits from what our other spiders should be. So again, I tried to only include like what I felt like were the good spiders, and then if we have other things in here, you know, they're trying to be like supporting synergies for the spider shenanigans overall. So other things that I try to put in here is like alternate win cons as well, or like overrun effects. So we have Return of the Wild Speaker. It could either draw us cards or punch face for a lot of damage. And then we also have like Nissa with that -7 ability as kind of like a alternative Craterhoof behemoth thing. I didn't put Craterhoof in here because I feel like I am kind of tired of that win con. So if you put it in there, no problem. No judgment here. I just didn't want to do that for this deck because I wanted to try something different a bit. But yeah, so no further ado, let's just jump into the gameplay and I'll see you out there. Hello friends. Unfortunately, my mic decided to cut out during this point and I heckin' have to do this voiceover instead. So sorry for the format change up here. I mulligan the first hand just because I was worried about the slow start, because with Etali we want to be heck aggro. So I dropped this Repeteer's Outlook or Overlook to try to get a snow-covered forest. And that way we could play Kinker Bloom or whatever I had in my hand. Oh, sorry, that was a different game. I'm doing great at this commentary. Okay, so I think I was deciding at this point between if I wanted to play Dryad or Cultivate for turn 3. And again, also concerned about like Etali being out there for, you know, the aggro start, feeling like maybe I was outclassed here. When the intro first started, I thought I was just gonna straight up like lose to this commander, so I was kind of like not fully in it. Again, kind of worried I was just gonna lose, so I was trying to really focus on ramp and keeping like the pressure up. So went with Cultivate there because I felt like that would be better than Dryad for just getting lands on the battlefield. And I was also trying to read what Etali did for folks who don't know what this commander does. You know, not assuming stuff, because I've been bad about hovering over cards lately, I feel like. So let me know if you think that's not an issue, or if you like me reading out loud what commanders do. That's really helpful. So attacking with the Spiida here. Trying to get in what damage I can early game. I'm feeling a little better now that we have a decent amount of land out. So I was kind of debating if I wanted to drop the commander in. Counting the mana to see if they're about to be within Etali range. And they dropped a ship. Heckin' ship. Sweet. They moved in step. Now we're dropping the commander in, because I felt like the other Spiiders just wasn't going to be quite what we needed in that moment. And our little Mirkwood spider is able to give Death Touch to another legendary here. Does that say Golden Agony? Sorry, I guess I should be able to know what cards are being played in my own gameplay. So the Heckin' Ship and Dryad just bounce off of each other. And I got a little bit of damage through, but still concerned because I know what's about to drop. And here comes Etali! Exiling stuff, and I was hoping they wouldn't hit anything because this is a spider deck, and it's not going to be super useful. They hit Bushwhack and choose to fight basically the non-Death Toucher here, which is Dryad. And they get Elvish Mystic. So what I was really concerned about here was now that we were in range to flip Etali with the Mana Dorks, because I believe they have 9 mana right now. So I was going, what can I do about blockers? And they crewed up the little ship there, which I was kind of surprised. I was like, okay, they're attacking. And I didn't realize that it had the ability to blink Etali, so thought that was really cool tech there. So we get a trigger here because our spider dealt damage and it killed something. So this cool little flavor piece here with the golden ship. And we got a food token copy of it. And then Italia Instep came back. They get another trigger. And they got Masked Vandal, which, looking at what it does, I didn't have anything super threatening on the board. It was basically just that food token. So they probably didn't want to exile anything out of their graveyard to get that Masked Vandal ability. Sweet. So we got another Spider. One that's very good. Ishkana, however you say them. I'm dropping Sylvan Ranger, just trying to get another land drop and bodies to help block potential infect damage, because I was trying to gear up for the flip Etali, and again, I didn't really think I was gonna stand a chance in this match. It's got a Swampy Poo, and then I realized that this was highlighting so that I could actually crew it, which I was surprised because I didn't think I was going to be able to crew it here, so I used the Sylvan Ranger to crew the ship, and I was like super excited and freaking out because I was like, I didn't know the food tokens work that way, because I had seen it before with other decks, and I didn't realize like it still held on to this like crew ability here. So they're blocking with the Masked Vandal, and then taking the rest of the damage because they don't want to lose their little mana friends here. And then I got to make a copy of Masked Vandal, which I used to hit the Arcane Signet, exiling my original copy of Masked Vandal. Good times there. And then Sylvan Ranger came back, got to ramp again, or at least fetch up a basic land. This time I got a forest. Accidental synergies I was not ready for. Feeling pretty cool about this, because this was some synergies I certainly hadn't accounted for. Then they play Chandra, Awakened Inferno. And I was like, oh no, this is where I lose, right? So reading a little bit about what they did. And then they play Toperi Stomper. Yeah, I always want to cut to tappies. Toe Tappy Stomper. Okay, so they -3 Chandra to do a lot of damage to my creatures. And I was kind of surprised because I really thought they were going to flip that Etali. So then they attack with Etali, and I have a Death Touch Spider available. So I choose to block. Kills the Etali. And this is the funnest part here. So I make a copy of Etali. With the food token, I still got the ETB. And I hit Ulamog, and they just scooped right then and there. And I'm looking at my hand for a mulligan. For this one, I think I wanted to keep because it had Murderous Rider and the Meat Hook Massacre, and then I could play Kinkerbloom turn 2. So I felt like that was a pretty decent start, and if I needed an answer to Tatiova, I had one. So I wanted to start with Riveteer's Outlook and probably get like a forest, since I had a Swampy Poo in my hand. Sweet, drop in that Riveteer's Outlook. Overlook? Wow, I keep calling it the wrong thing. Great commentary. You're grabbing the forest. And then prepping that mana for the Kinkerbloom. And then hovering over Tatiova to try to show what they do. Throwing that Kinkerbloom into play. Hovering over Tatiova again to show what they do. So hopefully that's not obnoxious. And dropping the Temple of Milady. And deciding whether or not to scry this Fable to the bottom. I kept it on top because I wanted to make sure I could guarantee 6 mana to cast the commander. To cast our Spider. And then attacking with the old Kinkerbloom. Trying to do all the bonk damage I can while they're open. And also trying to take advantage of the lack of countering my stuff, which is nice. So they hit their 3rd land drop. Dropping Tireless Tracker, which I was like, okay, I have Meat Hook Massacre in my hand, and if that Tireless Tracker gets too big, too out of control, I really need to like deal with it now. So I just use Murderous Rider, blowing them up. And then activating that Fabled Passage. And I believe that was for Forest as well. Yeah. Look at that. And then bonk in the face again. Just kind of slow, casual magic, right? So they tap out, casting Igna and Essica. And at first I thought that was like only legendary creatures could tap for other mana, but it's actually any creature could tap. But it just has to be used to cast a creature spell. So dropping in the Reliquary Tower. Thinking about life. And then using Murderous Rider as its creature side. And decide not to swing in, because I would just lose a creature needlessly. And just trying to anticipate like if they're going to put the commander in play, or if they have some big stompy creature threat in hand. So they drop Silverback Elder. And at this point, I'm sweating it a little, but then I top deck Blood on the Stone. I'm like, heck yeah. So at this point, I'm deciding whether or not to attack in or just board wipe. And I was like, you know what, I'm board wiping anyways, might as well attack. So they block my Canker Bloom. And Murderous Rider gets in for 2 whole damage. And I drop my board wipe. Boom. And bring back Canker Bloom. Murderous Rider goes to the bottom of my library. And then opponents hovering over my stuff, which always makes me nervous, because I'm like, okay, you clearly have removal or an answer or something. So that board wipe kind of hurt them too, because they went from having 6 mana to 4 if they attacked both their creatures for stuff. So they pass. I'm like, okay, respect the open mana, but also I gotta force out the counter spell, so I figured my Spider, the commander, I could just recast if it got countered. So it hits the board. I'm wondering if the open mana was a bluff. And then they resculpt. I have no answer to that, but I'm okay with it. Because then I get actually a pretty decent sized body here. A 4/4 elemental. And they don't have any bodies out, so I figured I'm going to get at least another 7 damage in. So they put in a tap land. And I noticed that they don't have their commander out yet, but I figured they didn't do it just because, you know, it could get blown up. And then they have to rebuild their strategy a little bit if they have to recast their commander. I've already used a decent amount of removal on them, so it makes sense if they wanted to hold it back. But at the same time, maybe they need a blocker so that they don't get hit for 7. So they cast their commander, Tatiova. Oop. And I get a land. And I go, what heck? I'm not too worried about it. And since they'd have to trade their commander, yep, so they just take the damage. That's why I tacked in. It's like, it's kind of a win-win situation for me. And then they cast a Shia, and I was like, whoa! Other stuff's got flying. Because the... Oh, nice. I made another land fly. But all the, like, creatures became forests in addition to their creature types. And then I'm like, okay, we drew an answer. So I cast Binding the Old Gods. And then I'm like, okay, I'll blow something up. And then I'm a little confused here because I'm like, what the heck happened? Why can't I blow anything up? And I realized after a little bit, it's because Ashaya and all the other creatures are lands. So, because Binding the Old God says non-land permanent, so it actually had no valid target. So it just fizzled out. And then Shelob made a token copy of Tatiova. And I can't do math, no surprise here, but I decided to use Canker Bloom to proliferate the Saga to go fetch up a forest. Because I was planning to meet Hook anyways and it was going to die, so I wanted to get the value that I could. And then again here with the temple, I didn't really care turning it into a creature because I had so many lands. And then again, struggling with the old math. And pay X is 2, so we could kill that Ashaya. And now, it looks pretty good. And the opponent scoops. GG's. Alright, playing against Finn the Fame Pair. And for this one, I was like, okay, we need a really good early start where we have like some sort of blocker to stop Finn. And I had a little 1-cost creature, so I felt confident about this hand. And since I knew Finn wasn't going to be hitting the board until turn 2, I figured Fabled Passage would make the most sense to get the other kind of swampy poo that we needed. instead of just putting that Spider in right away. So drop the forest, hit Explorer, make the other land drop, and then put in our Spider friend to help block. So the goal here was just to try to delay those early game poison counters as much as possible, because Finn, as you can see here, gets into play quite early. And so at this point I wasn't really afraid to just throw stuff in front of the Death Touchers, because again, early game Finn usually wants to win, and then once he gets late game with like the bigger blockers or other creatures out on the board, it's kind of harder for them to snowball with those poison counters. So I was just trying to prevent stuff too in case they had like any sort of proliferation effect. So we hit into another creature. And then I also liked having the back for more, because that also meant we had some recursion. And now that I was getting into, you know, casting my commander mana zone time, I was feeling a little good. More confident that I wasn't going to die right away to all these poison counters. But also trying to be aware of the like removal, because if it's like a fight spell, these Death Touchers can just, you know, destroy stuff pretty easily. So they attack, and now that Finn's out, I just decide to block, because again, trying to stop those poison counters. And I knew that that was going to make a replacement body. And I put in the commander, an 8/8 Puncherooer. And I figured at this point, if they attack in this turn, the 1/1 can block the 1/2, and my commander would trade with their commander, because I had the back for more. And I knew I could just bring it back if I needed to. And we still have our cute little Spider friend in the graveyard. So they play, I think it's called Access Tunnel. And if they pay 3 mana, they can make a creature, or maybe it's 2 mana, can't quite remember. Basically, they can make a creature with power 3 or less unblockable, which is really good in this Finn deck. So they fight my commander, and I make a food copy of their basilisk, whatever that was. And then they attack in with Finn, and I just throw my little Sapo in front of Finn to prevent getting that poison counter. Thank you for your service, little buddy. Bonk. Bye, Sapo. And then I, at this point, realized I had back for more, and I had accidentally put my commander back into the command zone. So I'm kind of laughing at myself a little bit there. But at least I have that up, potentially to bring back another Spider. Looks like the opponent is thinking here. Probably wondering how I was able to recast my commander, and it was because of the Castle Grainberg. I think that's what it is. But you pay 4 mana into it, and it lets you have 6 to cast creature spells. They just drop the swiftiest of boots, looking to protect their commander. But it feels like pretty much they're not going to be able to punch through the line here. So they cast Hoarding Recluse. And again, just trying to hold the line with my Spiders. And they attack in, and I was totally okay with blocking. Or they're at least looking like they're ready to attack in. They're hesitating, because they may not have enough mana to recast them. And since they have the swiftiest of boots in, I can't target them with that Putrefy I just drew, but I have Crossing Grip to blow up the little swiftiest of boots. And I have my commander. And at this point, I'm just trying to outpace them a little bit with just blockers and stuff, because it didn't look like they had much card draw. So now they're able to make their commander unblockable. because of that access tunnel. Very good in this deck. Okay. I hit another land drop. Now I blow up their commander. And they make it hexproof. So my spell fizzles out. And then I escape the little chain web. Acnir? However you pronounce that. Just trying to get rid of like non-creature spells I just know that I can't get back from the graveyard. And then attack in. Since I was hoping the 2 blockers I had would at least absorb the potential poison counters here. And I declined this time, remembering that because I have back for more in my hand. So I was like, I can just decline it this time. But then they put my commander on top of my library or in my library or something like that. So I just put it back to the command zone, and I just figured I could use that back for more to get a different spider back. So they make Finn unblockable again. Go into 4 poison counters. And I can recast my commander. I'm trying to look in my graveyard to see if there's anything special. Didn't see it, so I just recast my commander. And I decided it's time to start punching face, because at this point, they can just make their commander unblockable, so no sense in holding back. So they take the damage. And if they don't have anything to deal with my board state, I was pretty confident that I could just swing in and knock them out if they didn't block my stuff. So again, Finn's gonna get unblockable here with the access tunnel. Go into 6 poison counters. And then I was so happy I top decked this Toski here, because I'm going to draw a lot of cards from this. Attack in. Opponent blocks my commander. And I hit with 3 creatures to draw 3 cards thanks to Toski. Look at that, even got a halfling. That's kind of funny. And then the Great Henge, so I'm like, heck yeah, I hit all of my card draw elements now. So this is when I really felt like I was starting to pick up steam. And if they had any more fight spells, I had like Tamios, like safekeeping and stuff like that. So that Deathloom Gardener. And then they good game me. So here I was scared. I was like, do they have a proliferation effect? So basically they can make Finn unblockable and then proliferate. But then I was like panicking, but then I didn't realize the opponent had no cards in hand. And then they just scooped. So GG's, opponent. Show me what you got. Oh, we're playing against Tatiova. Kill. This is where I was like, I'll keep this hand because it feels like I could have something early game, just because, you know, with Elf Ball, they just spiral like super quickly out of control. So I just was hoping to get some decent bodies down so that if they did attack me early game, I'd have some way to kind of like slow them down a bit, you know? Just ramping with the mini partings. I have Boseiju and Sylvan Ranger. Just checking out the forest, you know. And then I think I grab a Swampy Boo. Yeah. Look at that. All that mana starting off so solid here. And then Marwin hits. And honestly, after that happens, I'm like, well, I don't have any removal in my hand. I think I'm dead. Because Marwin, if you don't know, gets a +1/+1 counter for each elf that enters, and then if they tap, they create, I believe, floating mana based on what their power is. So especially in like a green deck like this, you're just gonna be able to pour your whole hand out. Yeah, and then Evolution Sage with the proliferate counters is so sweet. So I put in Dryad, just hoping again I can just dump as much lands as I can out of my hand and just try to keep the pressure on if possible. And I know that Tyvar ult can be pretty brutal because every time you cast an elf spell, the emblem I think lets you draw like 2 cards. It's just really, really good. So now they're just able to untap stuff, put counters on it, make it even bigger, and they're just having an incredible start here, especially with that Evolution Sage. So then they drop Beast Whisper, and I'm just like, ah, this is pretty intense. But you know what? I love me a good elf ball deck, so. And then they drop the new Tyvar, which is pretty awesome and good. It's a 5/4 as well, which is a very strong elf. Or bigger elf. Thicker elf? I don't know. So then they put the protection on Marwin, so even if I do destroy it, it will come back. So my removal spell that I draw is one that unfortunately doesn't do much against stuff with counters. So I decided to blow up their card draw to hopefully slow them down a little bit. And I have to type in Spiidas. Spiida. Okay. And I'm horrified to attack in at this point. And I kind of don't know if watching back if I should have just gone for it and hit Tyvar so that they don't get that ult, but it's so hard to tell with all the shenanigans going on, you know? So they proliferate again, and I just am ready for the sweet embrace of death at this point. And I'm just having a lot of fun, honestly, watching my opponent do their thing, because this is like such good synergy and like the perfect start. Smell fear, accurate. So they proliferate again and they fight something I have. So Marwin's just huge at this point, like it's really cool. And then Leyline, I believe, of Abundance lets them tap for extra mana. So they're just really doing work. And they blow up one of my pieces, my Spiida. And they're just going for it. So I draw Nissa. It doesn't feel like that's going to help me at all. So I just put down my commander because it's a Death Touch 8/8. Doesn't mean much against all these huge elves. And yeah, at this point, the writing feels like it's on the wall, you know? So Tyvar Kellic gets their ult, and then at this point, even if I ult, like I'm gonna die anyways because of the poison tip archer. Or get close to death. And Tyvar Kel drops again. And they have 18 floating mana. And then Glissa, which I guess, is she an elf? I guess she is an elf. She's a Phyrexian elf. I forgot about that. I was about to say honorary elf, but I think they're just straight up an elf. And look at that. Marwin's at 52 counters, 53, 54, 55, 56, 57, 58, 59. Just a casual, I think it was like a 60 something, 60. And I was joking around saying it was almost the perfect creature. Just needed about 9 more counters. And I try to block what I can, but you know, death is on its way. And GG, opponent, you kicked my butt, and also that was amazing. Alright, Satoru Umezawa. Gonna be a spooky time, because you gotta stop the ninjutsu stuff of like really spooky stuff getting cheated in. So I wanted a hand that had some removal to at least deal with the first time Satoru was cast. And I also liked having like a turn 1 creature that I could put out to stop like potential stuff trying to get ninjutsu'd in, but then they dropped an unblockable creature, so I was like, well, that kind of sucks. Here I was thinking I had the perfect counter start to these ninjas gonna hit my face. So get Slither Blade, goes ahead and bonks my face, and then again just trying to prep for essentially the commander dropping so I can blow it up with Murderous Rider. And because I can't block that little Slitherborn, I was like, you know what, I'll just bonk them for 1 Spider damage. So they're at 3 mana. They could cast their commander right now if they want to, but they may not want to put it in unprotected, because it is a target for removal. It's kind of a kill on sight thing. So they cast Biting Palm Ninja, which basically has Menache, and if it does damage, they can remove the Menache counter and exile one of my cards and cast it. I think it's from my library. So I end up just like blowing that up because I didn't want them to take anything of mine, even though it probably wouldn't be super useful to them. I just like felt like that card was going to be a pain to deal with. So I drop in Skyfisher, sacrifice my little cutie 1/1, and blow up their Slither Blade, and hoping that I kind of removed all their critical pieces here, so that if they do cast their commander, hopefully, you know, they can't do too many shenanigans with it. So Urborg Scavengers hits my little Spider that was a Death Toucher, so it gained Death Touch. And then I drop in, because we do only have 2 cards in hand, so I just go for the Great Henge, because if I cast my commander, it'll be super discounted. And then I was looking at Bala Ged to potentially get that Diabolic Intent back, but I decided to hold off on doing that, so I could keep the Snakeskin Veil up in case they had removal and wanted ninjutsu something in. Now just patiently waiting. They moved to second main phase, skipped right through the combat, which told me that maybe they have some counter magic. So at this point I was worried about stuff getting countered and trying to play around that. So one of the things I was thinking about was I really want the Great Henge, so I figured they would counter this Balaged that I was trying to get Diabolic Intent back, and then that would at least hopefully get 1 counter spell out of their hand, and I'd be able to safely cast the Great Henge maybe next turn. So I was right about the counter spell, baited it out. I was okay with that. And we still have Nissa on the board and close to ulting. So again, feeling okay with stuff, and then also having the Snakeskin Veil to protect our other blocker here. And I noticed that they paused, so I wondered if they had like the removal spell, which also made me feel a little better that I left at least mana up for that Snakeskin Veil. Because again, if they're trying to cheat something out here with this ninjutsu stuff, at least I'm trying to keep like my board state protected a little bit. So move to combat. It looks like they might just skip right through combat. They're thinking about life and stuff and go to second main phase. Still nothing else, and they just scoop. GG's, opponent. Alright, hope you had fun with all the shenanigans. I actually just kept all the games that I recorded back to back in the series in the order that you see like recording with them. I did 6 total games, 1 was just a test game, and then I just jumped right into things, so I hope that was interesting to watch. I hadn't really tested this deck too much, but I didn't have much time to, so I just jumped right into things. But I think as far as like cards that performed really well for like MVP status is a Skyfisher Spider. One, because like the ability to just remove like a non-land permanent I think is really important, and especially with like your Spiders and all that kind of stuff, it's just really cool to see like all these different synergies to come together, especially when part of those synergies have good removal pieces. And again, I think Skyfisher Spider is a really good piece for this commander in this deck overall. And I think Nissa was really huge to help create bodies or chunk chump blockers or that -7 ability. We didn't actually use their ult, but just to have that there again as like a solid game closer, I think is really important. But yeah, so I hope you had fun. I was actually really surprised how well this deck did. Again, I did 6 games and I think I only lost 1. I mean, you'll see. 1 test game I won, and then whatever happened here. Can't keep track of things, everything's a lie. But I was actually really surprised how good this commander was because I had pretty low expectations. But I think because I did play against them a couple of times, one of the major weaknesses I had noticed was they're very expensive. So Historic Brawl being a very removal-focused, format, I was like, it's really important to have ways to keep them protected. So that's why I had like Tamiyo's Safekeeping, Snakeskin Veil, and other types of things that could potentially help with that, especially like Kaya's Ghost Form, I think is a huge protection piece. So I hope you enjoyed the games. Let me know what you like in your build, if you have a Shelob deck or if you're thinking of building them. What are some cool like synergy cards, and what are some cool like newer Lord of the Rings cards, because we're still learning all the cards that exist since the sets are coming out so much faster. So I really like hearing cards that excite all of you. But yeah, thank you so much for watching. Have a good one, and bye.